Good evening. My name is Dr. Victor Narcisse. I'm the Deputy Surgeon General of Health Education for Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Tonight I have the unique opportunity to introduce our our Surgeon General, Dr. Jeffrey Sterling. Um, Dr. Sterling is a global leader in community healthcare, organizational operations, and efficiency. He has distinguished himself in business and has created business solutions in over 36 states and countries on 5 different continents. Sterling Initiatives is an international healthcare consulting and implementation firm that provides entities with clinical, operational, and financial best practices. Simco is the one that I interface with most, and it's America's first managed preventative health organization that in 2022 successfully steered passage of a $300 million budget item by the state of Illinois to implement health prevention and promotional efforts. SI Medical Supplies, an international medical and surgical PPE equipment company, and SI STEMS is a hospitalist and emergency physician staffing company. Whew, that's a lot. Brother Sterling is an author of 5 books and currently serves as the inaugural Surgeon General of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and chairman of the Illinois State Black Chamber Commerce's Health Care Committee. Dr. Sterling has founded the Minority Association of Pre-Health Students, a national organization of pre-medical and other healthcare aspirants with chapters in over 300 colleges nationally as we speak. Dr. Sterling has degrees from Northwestern University and Harvard School of Public Health and the University of Illinois College of Medicine. He's received executive education at Dartmouth College Tuck School of Business, and he has served as department chair and medical director of over 24 hospital emergency departments. He has served in this capacity over 3 level 1 trauma centers, which is the most complex. He pledged Alpha Phi Alpha at Alpha Mu chapter in 1982 and is currently affiliated with Beta Tau Alumni. Brother Sterling, we'd love to hear more about your discussion and how to extend life expectancy. Have a great show.
Thank you, Brother Dr. Narcisse. It's a pleasure to be with you. And welcome to everyone, as always, on behalf of the Board of Directors and our General President, Brother Willis Lanza III. Welcome to another edition of the Surgeon General Initiative Health Webinars. Tonight, we're going to do something a little bit different. It's going to be quite practical. I really just want to provide you with tips. As is often the case, these events are meant to be a resource that empowers you to become a better steward of your own healthcare. And to that end, we're not just going to talk at you, we're actually going to be giving you things that you can use and that you should be used. Because what I've done, I think it took about 2 years to complete my last book, which is entitled Straight No Chaser Health. And what I sought to do was to discover best practices that equate to the fountain of youth so that you can live a long, healthy life filled with the type of quality that you would have it be. So let's get to it. But first, this type of conversation does require a few disclaimers. Nothing I'm going to discuss with you is a guarantee. Simply put, even if you do all the right things, you can still get hit by that bus, or in these days, be in the wrong mall, church, or school during a mass shooting. This conversation is actually about risk reduction and putting yourself in the best possible position for good things to happen. As such, we're not actually giving you medical advice. We're just giving you where best practices and the standard of care lies. Your medical advice should come from your medical provider in consideration of your individual circumstances. I also want you to know that I'm not an absolutist in this conversation. I am every bit as committed to quality of life as I am quantity of life. Now, here's the first important point for your consideration. Accidents and randomness aside, I appreciate that your life expectancy is analogous to an amount of currency, which is kind of defined by your genes. The choices that we make about how to spend that currency is what we define as the quality of life. Now, here's a pro tip. Your choices have consequences. Saying that is not meant to suggest that all consequences are negative. So, for example, although we know that every cigarette you smoke subtracts around 7 to 11 minutes off of your life expectancy, And every cigar that you smoke is equivalent to about a pack of cigarettes. But we also know that moving to a plant-based diet and simply eating more fruits and vegetables adds years to your life. Choices have consequences. So what we're describing over the next hour is evidence-based. These are not opinions. These are things that have actually been researched, documented, and represents the standard of care. So if you want to get straight no chaser, you can certainly go to Amazon or everywhere that books are sold. So let's get to the presentation. All right. Let's move to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, here's some things for you to do this evening. I want you to take notes. I'm going to be giving you a checklist of 25 tips, and you can determine what your grade is yourself. But each of these things actually represents items that will increase your life expectancy. So the more of these things that you're doing, the better your risk factors are for a long, healthy, productive, and high quality life. So play along, and if you want to share in the notes, you can do that. But otherwise, use this yourselves to ascertain what it is you're doing in your life and how you can get better at it. Plan to implement what you learned this evening. There's going to be a lot. And I really hope that a lot of you out there are shaking your head and saying, I already do this. That's the point. That's the goal. I want you to do as many of these things as you possibly can, because this is the truth. And also get yourself an accountability partner, because it's so easy to know what to do, but having someone that holds your feet to the fire, so to speak, is a fantastic way to go about these things. So let's get to it. Next slide, please. You know, according to the World Health Organization, approximately half of all premature deaths, which we define as death but before the age of 80 in the United States, are due to preventable causes. Of those deaths, behavioral factors cause about 35% of these premature deaths. That means the things that you choose to do cause about a third, just over a third of those deaths. And there are other things like metabolic risk factors and environmental factors that contribute another 35 or so percent. But let's be clear. If you identify preventable causes of death and eliminate your existing unhealthy behaviors, such as poor diet, inadequate activity, excessive alcohol and tobacco use, these things will make a huge difference in your life. And as you look at the slide, it's just true. Over history, we've actually done that. And that really is a big part of the reason why average life expectancy throughout history has increased in the way that this slide shows. It remains to be seen, of course, if we will actually reach the 100-year life expectancy that's depicted here at the bottom of the slide. But let's continue on. Next slide, please. Now, this slide is kind of interesting and it's kind of busy, so I'm just going to explain to you what you actually are looking at. Our life expectancy is in large part a function of who we are. In the United States, you actually can see that certain groups actually live longer than others. If you are a female, you're going to live longer than a male, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. But if you're Asian, you're pretty well situated. If you're white, pretty well situated. But then if you are Black, look at what starts to happen. And I'm just going to take a second and compare parts of this slide. If you are Black in the United States, you actually have about overall a 4 to 5 years shorter life expectancy than you would if you are white. And if you are a Black male, you have the same shortened life expectancy when compared to a Black female. So there are a lot of reasons for that, but I want you to have an understanding of this at the beginning of the conversation. Next slide, please. Now, this is a busy slide, and I don't expect you to focus on anything, but the point of showing you the slide is quite simple. The longer you live, the longer you actually can expect to live. So if you look at the top line on the slide at age 0 years, you will see that the life expectancy is what it is. As of 2020, the life expectancy in the United States for everyone is about 77 years. But you see, if you actually make it to the speed limit, about 55 years old, you can still, on average, have an additional life expectancy of 26, which, if you did the math there, takes you up to about 81 years old. So all of that is to say, stay alive, and the longer you manage to stay alive, the better your prospects will be. Let's continue on with the next slide. Now, here's the cheat code. In a study by the Harvard School of Public Health, Go Crimson, here's the 5 things that really add up to provide the biggest benefit. And you already know these things. So this isn't anything new to anybody. The issue really is how good are you at implementing these strategies. So let's go over these very quickly. If you are eating a healthy diet, if you are engaging in regular activity, and we'll define these things, if you have a healthy body weight, which is different than a sexy body weight, we'll talk about that. If you don't drink too much alcohol, we'll quantify that as well. And if you don't smoke, that's 90% of the game. If you want this to be your first take-home message, if you can simply focus on implementing and incorporating these 5 things into your lifestyle, you have accomplished quite a bit. And you don't need to be involved in fads, or you don't have to worry about discovering something on Google and pretending like the latest thing is the biggest thing. No, this is actually quite simple. Common things happen commonly, and the biggest bang for the buck is to be found in these 5 simple endeavors. So that's the cheat code, but let's actually get into these individual considerations. And this is where I want you to start keeping score. Number 1, how often do you walk? You know, according to another Harvard study, men who exercise regularly enjoy about 2 hours of added life expectancy for every hour of exercise. So you get tired after exercise, but you actually just added 2 years to your life. Think about that. Just take a brisk 30-minute walk 3 times a week. It can have the effect of gaining 2 years on your life expectancy. Now, I'm not talking about going down the street to the gym. You just take a walk. Walk around your house. There's no reason why you can't do that. Next time you get on the phone, just start walking. That's what I do all the time. Now, what's interesting in what I just said actually is not the recommendation of the American Heart Association, which calls for about 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity aerobic exercise, or 75 minutes per week of vigorous aerobic activity. I am strictly talking about life expectancy and increasing your life expectancy, and that's what the data shows. And by the way, moderate intensity means, here's a couple of ways that you can figure it out. You're breaking a sweat and you're raising your heart rate. And another way to know what moderate intensity is you probably can talk, but you can't sing your favorite song at the same time. That kind of equates to about 3 to 4 miles an hour while you're walking. So just go take a walk. You might even be walking while you're listening to me. Let's get to the next slide. Number 2, eat more fish. And I'm not talking about, I'm going to say this up front, I'm not talking about the Friday night fish fry. The National Institutes of Health and AARP Diet and Health Study actually was the largest study on health and diet that's ever been carried out. It followed over 240,000 men and 180,000 women for 16 years. And eating fish once or twice a week, which total about 2 grams of those omega-3 fatty acids that you may have heard of, actually can reduce your risk of dying from heart disease by 1/3. Now remember, we're talking about the #1 cause of death in the United States. There's an easy way for you to reduce that risk by 1/3. So just get yourself some fish twice a week. However, it's of note that those results do not apply to fried fish. Fried fish, the cooking process actually undoes the good work of those omega-3 fatty acids by increasing trans fatty acids in the cooking process. So get into grilled fish, get into baked fish, do it twice a week, and you've reduced your risk of heart disease by 1/3. That's a lot. It's a big deal. Next slide, please. Lift weights. Now, this is going to surprise you. Once again, I'm not talking about becoming a professional bodybuilder, and I'm not talking about heavy liftage. Yes, it gets tougher with age, but just resistance exercise, which is what this is called, actually reverses muscle and bone loss if you do it twice a week. Even for those in their 60s or their 70s, weightlifting can produce strength scores similar to those that existed in the 40s or 50s. You know, lifting weights is actually linked to a lower risk of death from any cause, with the exception of cancer. I'm going to say that again. Lifting weights produces a lower risk of death from every cause of death except for cancer. Now, this is actually surprising, but resistance weight training is actually better for you for your longevity than cardiovascular exercise. So let's quantify this. In 2021, there was a review of about 16 studies from around the globe that showed that life expectancy in those lifting weights for just 30 to 60 minutes a week increased between 10 and 17% across different studies. Those activities includes weightlifting, yoga, Pilates, and calisthenics. Even lifting and carrying your groceries around help. Incremental efforts produce incrementally good results. So get into lifting weights. Next slide, please. Sorry to all the cat lovers out here. Originally, I had the slide titled Get a Pet, but the truth of the matter is that the overwhelming amount of the research actually talks about dogs, and this is why dogs are man's best friend. Simply put, now I'm joking there, kind of sort of, but the research really does focus on dogs. Having the companionship of a pet is a pretty easy way to avoid depression and all that comes with it. Heart attack survivors who lived alone, who own dogs, have a 33% lower risk of death compared to those who don't. And stroke survivors who live alone with a dog have a 27% reduced risk of death. It's a real thing. This is what the data shows. This isn't an opinion. These are facts. Get yourself a dog, love on it. Next slide, please. Now, here we go. Everybody's heard about drinking water. Water, water, water. Well, there's some truth to that because in large part, we are water. You may have heard that your body weight is about 60% water. That ranges from about 75% in infants to about 55% in the elderly. You have to learn how to embrace clear fluids. I'm not talking about diet soda. I'm not talking about anything other than water. And I'll tell you this much, the better shape you're in, the more healthier you are, the more you will crave clear fluids. Get away from the sugar substituted drinks. I'm specifically talking about water, not soda, pop, or whatever you want to call it. Now, coffee without the cream and the sugar and wine, especially the reds, also have significant health benefits when you're not drinking water, so you can feel comfortable doing that as well. The connection to life expectancy is actually quite simple. Water is the building block that bathes every process that takes place inside of our bodies. Adequate function and adequate health are related to sufficient supplies of water. The take-home message here is quite simple. If you're not optimally hydrated, you may be more likely to develop a chronic disease such as heart failure, stroke, atrial fibrillation, coronary artery disease, lung disease, diabetes, and dementia. These have all been shown to be directly related, increasingly so, to states of dehydration. So drink water, go for 64 ounces a day. Next slide. Let's see here. Yes, equip your home with a smoke alarm. It's amazing how many homes, I don't know. When I visit you at your house, I'm looking around to make sure that things are safe. You got to check where the exits are and to see if you have a smoke alarm, carbon monoxide detector, and a fire extinguisher. The risk of dying in a home fire is 55% lower in homes that have working smoke alarms than those that don't. It's very simple. Get yourself these things. I really hope that everyone out there has one of these things, so go for it. Next slide. Did you know that over 5,000 motorcyclists died from car crashes as recently as 2019? The numbers have gone up since then. Wearing a helmet reduces the death risk from motorcycle riding by about 40%. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, motorcycle helmets save more than 1,800 lives a year. Without helmets, you're actually 3 times more likely to sustain a traumatic brain injury after a crash. There's really no question. Wearing a helmet is the most effective safety measure for motorcyclists, and that translates to a bicycle, scooter, or those who ski. There are about 620 people a year who die annually from head injuries related to bicycle crashes alone. And I mentioned bicycles, but the number there's about a 75 to 85% reduction in head-related injuries just by wearing that helmet. So yeah, it may not look as nice as you would want it to be or cool, but it works. And that's what we're talking about this evening, increasing your life expectancy and reducing the risk of death. Next slide. Yes, people are still dying prematurely and living compromised lives because of the failure to wear condoms. In addition to HIV/AIDS, we know that cervical cancer is literally a sexually transmitted infection. It's caused by the human papilloma virus. You'll know it as HPV. And there are other diseases. Remember, syphilis kills, and hepatitis B and hepatitis C can result in death. These things are all sexually transmitted. Please engage in safe sex, use condoms, consider monogamous relationships. Again, you already know what to do. The question is, how effective are you at implementing these strategies? Now, here's one of my favorites. Simply be optimistic. Optimism keeps the adverse effects of the body's physiologic stress response from harming you. You got to think about what stress is. Stress is a force that at some point optimizes your performance, but too much of it literally kills. Stress does kill. According to the National Institutes of Health, studies that spanned over 3 decades and thousands of people showed that optimists live as much as 15% longer than pessimists. That's approximately 4.5 years, folks. In fact, a Harvard study actually showed that higher levels of optimism are associated with living beyond age 90 across all races and ethnic groups. So I don't know about don't worry, be happy, but be optimistic, and that actually will take care of a lot of the things that stress you out. Next slide, please. As I sit here in Texas, yes, I am telling you to reduce your red meat intake. As I said early on, the closer you get to a plant-based diet, eating things that grow from the ground, the healthier you will be. According to yet another Harvard study, even the daily intake of just 1 serving of red meat, equivalent to the size of your fist, decreases your life expectancy by 13%. Okay? So you can do the math there. If you're expecting to live to be 80, 13%, that's about 9 years just by engaging in 1 serving of red meat. Think about it. Oh yeah, spend more time with friends. Healthy social networks have been shown to add as much to your life expectancy as the healthy endeavors that you partake in, such as dieting and exercise. Those benefits include lowering your blood pressure and reducing your high cholesterol. Get a friend, be a friend. This stuff works. Your overall survival rate increases by 50% with strong social relationships. Now, again, we can have a different conversation about social media. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actually having a friend in the real world in which you choose to engage. Studies actually show that more than 80% of people who live to be 100 years old communicate with a friend or family member daily. You don't necessarily have to be an extrovert, but just reaching out to someone who cares about you, maintaining and sustaining that relationship, it's a really big deal. And it fits hand in glove into the level of optimism you have in your life because you know that someone cares about you. Next slide, please. Be generous. Research studies consistently show that those who help others have better health than those who don't. And maybe it's convoluted in that people who are in position to help others maybe have a better baseline of health, but the fact of the matter is that your generosity feeds into a certain amount of optimism, which we've already talked about, and the development of social relationships, which we've talked about. So studies have also found that this reduces your blood pressure as much as exercise and medicines. So generosity does other things. It actually reduces the risk of anxiety, depression, and dementia, and it improves chronic pain management. So, doing good and being good are hand in glove again. So focus on it. Reach out to somebody, lend a helping hand when you can. There's a feedback loop, whether you believe it's being a blessing or the universe providing for you. Do this, try it. Random acts of kindness are a beautiful thing. Next slide. Now, there's a lot of people out here that this will be problematic for. When we were growing up, we were always told that you needed 8 hours of sleep a day to function, where actually the number is 7 hours, either 7 or 7.5 hours, depending on the piece of research that you're looking at. But you got to understand what sleep is. It's not an optional thing that interferes with your productivity or your work. It's your body's time in which you store memories. It's your body's time in which you recuperate, where your muscles heal from all the work that you've done, where your lungs rest and replenish themselves. There's so much that happens. Now, if you're getting less than 6.5 hours of sleep a day, or if you're getting more than 7.5 hours of sleep a day, that actually increases your risk of death. Okay, so let me say that again. If you're getting too little sleep or too much sleep, that actually increases the risk of death. The sweet spot is between 7 to 7.5 hours a day. Set your alarm for it. Furthermore, according to the American College of Cardiology, there's things called quality sleep measures. If you're hitting the numbers in terms of how you should be sleeping and getting a good night's sleep, that literally increases your life expectancy 4.7 years for men and 3.4 years for women, compared to those who don't have those elements of quality sleep. So my suggestion to you is that you actually prioritize, and we'll talk about this in the webinars, about how to sleep properly, how to ensure that you have high quality sleep. This is important. So make a note of this and compare what it is you're doing to what it is that's recommended. You know, there's so much talk about foods. You've heard conversations about superoxidants, superfoods, and antioxidants. I just want to focus on this one thing. Blueberries meet the criteria for everything that you would want in these antioxidant superfoods. If you consume simply 2 cups a day of blueberries, that will prevent many chronic diseases. It will reduce depression, and it increases memory, improves memory. Blueberries have been shown to delay aging, and it promotes longevity. This isn't about me, but I will tell you that I do this on the regular. Put it in a smoothie, eat it as a snack in between your meals. Consider it. And by the way, it does contain a compound that is a hallmark anti-cancer agent. Just do it. Get yourself some blueberries, teach yourself to like them. And this is something that's been studied in multiple organisms, mammals and non-mammals, and it seems to increase life expectancy in many different types of organisms. So, you do well to actually make blueberries your snack of choice. Next slide. There's a million jokes about the benefits of sex, but legitimate benefits include burning calories, reducing stress, inducing sleep, and reducing pain. According to the National Institutes of Health, makes you happy, enhances your immune responses, it reduces prostate cancer risk, and it can reduce neuroticism. One thing that's particularly interesting in this is that all sex is not created equal. Sex in the marital setting has more benefits than it does in other forms, and that relates to how married couples actually have a longer life expectancy than non-married couples. So think about that. Take it for what it's worth, but be safe with it. Next slide. Last time I had this conversation with someone about snacking nuts, they brought me back evidence that they were engaging in it, and they showed me the saltiest, most fat-filled nuts that they can find. That really isn't the goal of this recommendation. Healthier nuts include almonds, cashews, walnuts, and pistachios. If you eat them 5 times a day, that'll add between 1 to 3 years to your life expectancy, but please minimize the added salt. According to a 30-year study that featured about 120,000 patients, all that you need is a 1-ounce serving a day. That's a very small handful on a daily basis, and that produces a 20% reduction in death compared to those who avoid snacking like this. This is kind of important for those of you that work desk jobs. Don't ever find yourself working so much that you sit down for more than 3 hours at a time. That activity actually can reduce your life expectancy by 2 years, even if you are otherwise physically active. Learn to take breaks. If you have one of the Apple Watches or other measuring devices, they'll make you get up for 1 minute each hour. That's a very good way to go. Take breaks, stretch, move around. Don't be a couch potato. That's been studied as far away as the British Medical Journal, here to the Journal of the American Medical Association. Just get active and move around. I could have started with this one. Aging perhaps is sped up most by excessive amounts of UV radiation exposure. UV radiation actually speeds the natural aging process and is the primary cause of wrinkling. This stuff, sun, breaks down your skin's connective tissue. What can you do? Stay moisturized. Use sunscreen when you know you're going to be exposed. It's not cool to burn yourself to a crisp outside. I don't know who came up with that idea, but I'm here to tell you skin cancer is a thing. And yes, it happens in all races at areas that are exposed. So you're going to be better off in the long term. Believe me, the sun will get in there. You'll get the benefits of sunlight. Just moderate the exposure that you have, and it'll make you look better, keep your skin from wrinkling, and help you live longer. Next slide, please. Lower your blood pressure. Now, once again, here's the cheat code. There are actual recommendations, but the number that appears to be the sweet spot for blood pressure is a blood pressure of about 115/75. And I say that because at this level, the rate of heart attacks and strokes is cut in half relative to those who have high blood pressure. Obviously, that increases blood pressure. So write that number down and compare what it is you're doing to that. Now, I got to ask you, are you checking your blood pressure once a week? I do. You should. So how can you know what you have if you're not paying attention to it? And this is especially important in this consideration because high blood pressure is called the silent killer. You won't even know that you have it if you're not checking it, and one day you'll have a stroke or a heart attack. That is literally how these things happen. You don't always get a warning sign or signal with these things. So start checking your blood pressure and strive to get it lower. Next slide, please. Brush and floss at least twice daily. There's so many benefits to this. And if you've been paying attention to our webinars, you'll notice that our Deputy Surgeon General for Dental Health continues to pound this message forward. The American Heart Association notes that flossing decreases the rates of dementia, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and stroke. Folks, it is not just about your teeth and your gums. Your gums actually are the portal to a very significant amount of your bloodstream. So disease there flows to your body and wreaks havoc everywhere. So whether directly or indirectly, gum health promotes longevity of life. Next slide. You all know this, right? Wear your seatbelt. You don't need to get a ticket to know that that's what you're supposed to be doing. You know, the combination of seatbelt and check this out, the combination of seatbelts and driving within 5 miles per hour of the posted speed limit is the single most effective approach to surviving a motor vehicle crash. It's not an accident, it's a crash. Drive within 5 miles an hour of the posted speed limit, wear a seatbelt, and you may survive these things. Wearing that seatbelt actually reduces the risk of fatal injury in a passenger car by 45%. That's why it's mandated. But again, I'm pretty sure that the vast majority of you are doing that. Let's move to the next slide. Now, this slide says eat 25 grams a day of fiber, but I put this here for a simple reason. I actually want you to learn how to start looking at labels. You grab potato chips, you look at foods, you grab a pop, you may call it soda or a cold drink, and you don't even pay attention to how many calories you're drinking, how much added sugars in there, how much sodium. But in this example, there are good things that you can look at if you learn how to read labels, and one of them is the amount of fiber that you eat. The number here to know is 25. If you're getting 25 grams of daily fiber in your diet, it corresponds to a lowered risk of death from cardiovascular disease, infectious disease, and respiratory diseases by up to 55, 56% in men and between 50 to 59% in women. We won't get into in this conversation exactly how fiber works, but take the tip. Trust me on this one. This is evidence-based. Get more fiber in your diet. It'll help you be regular. Learn how to laugh. Laughter has health benefits. Everybody needs a funny friend. If you don't have a funny friend, be the funny friend. If you're not the funny friend, then get a funny friend. The health benefits are many. Laughter strengthens your immune system because it decreases the stress-induced release of certain types of hormones that will damage you. You got to learn how to tell a joke. You got to learn how to take a joke. It's a very important thing. And happy, healthy, wise, right? That's how we do it. This is something the young me might laugh at, but the older me has learned to greatly appreciate. Learn how to love to eat fruits and vegetables. You know, again, I'll share with you a personal tip. I've, over the last few years, learned to substitute about 90% of the desserts that I eat with fruits. Have fruits for dessert. You might like it. There's never a bad time to eat grapes. Those of you know me may be chuckling at that. If you eat 5 servings a day of fruits and vegetables compared to those who have had only 2 servings a day, that's about a 13% lower risk of death from all causes. It's about a 12% lower risk of death from heart disease and stroke, the 10% lower risk from death from cancer, and it's about a 35% lower risk of death from respiratory diseases. That's a lot of better living just by choosing to fill half of your plate. If you don't know what the healthy eating plate is, you need to know half of your plate for your meals should actually contain some type of salad or other vegetables. Get with the program, look that up. We'll talk about it in ongoing webinars. Now, I said that 5 servings a day is what you should be going for. Handful of grapes here, half an apple with your breakfast, half an orange for your lunch. It's not that hard to actually do. Unfortunately, only 9% of adults actually eat that number of either fruits or vegetable servings that they're supposed to. 9% eat that number of vegetables, the recommended number of vegetables per day servings, and only 12% eat the recommended number of fruit servings per day. So do better. Incrementally, you can find yourself getting there, but you have to start somewhere. It goes even beyond 1 apple a day keeps the doctor a day. You need 5 servings of this goodness, and it will improve the quality and quantity of your life. And last but not least, the Dr. Google trend that's going on out there is good, but I want you to continue to get better at it. I want you to become a better consumer of healthcare, health information, and medical advice. Much of the increase in life expectancy during the 20th century was due to being proactive about health, including getting recommended screenings and, yes, recommended immunizations. But in today's world, you have to become a steward of your own healthcare. You have to become a partner with your healthcare provider. Trust but verify. We're past the time in which people go into their physician's offices and just take everything at their word. That's not good anyway, because you'll just go home and do what you've been doing anyway. And learn how to engage your healthcare provider and talk through scenarios that help you maneuver these recommendations into things that you actually can get behind and do. This is where moderation comes in. And moderation by itself is not the answer, but moderation is a very good thing when it comes to getting you on the path. So just to give you one example, for those of you that are out there chugging Coke or Pepsi every day and all the sugar that it contains, well, let's use another example. In the South, sweet tea is a really big deal, right? And if you get a glass of tea that has 4, 6, or 8 sugars in it, you're used to that level of taste. But if you actually put yourself on a 4, 6, or 8 week program during which you actually acclimated your taste buds by reducing the number of sugars that you put in that tea one at a time, you actually will adjust. And over a period of time, that moderation, you don't even know what hits you. You actually are now able to enjoy the healthier option that was available to you. So that's what I want you to think about. That's where we should be going with this. So let's see here. Before I move on, let me just take a second and see what some of your comments are. Share your grade with your partner. That's a very good one. And learn how to grade yourself on a weekly, on a monthly basis. I agree with that 100%. To Sandy Ray Lewis out there, there's a reason why people prefer weights than jumping on a treadmill. If you have knee problems, if you have hip problems, if you have breathing problems such as asthma or other such things, getting on a treadmill is kind of difficult. Now, I never told you that you needed to be on a treadmill. You actually can just take a walk around the house. You can take a walk around the block. Start by doing that at your own pace and work your way up. It's an amazing thing how your body works. With time, you will actually find that, hey, I want to run. Instead of just walking, you'll start walking faster. And then instead of walking faster, you'll actually find yourself running, jogging. So the healthier you are, the healthier you'll feel, and the better you'll want to be, and the more natural these things will become. So thank you for sharing that comment. Michelle Easley says, going to the gym 5 days a week has been a blessing. Walking on the treadmill for 30 minutes is very beneficial. And, that's so good because accountability partners really are important to this. And that's the whole reason why you go to the gym. It's not that they have equipment that's necessary. If you actually go to the places around the world that have the longest life expectancies, they don't have 24, 48 hour, 72 hour fitnesses. People just walk. They engage in labor. They plow the land and do other work. They walk, they're active. So you don't necessarily need to go to the gym. You just need to engage in the level of activities that I talked about. Walking 3.5 to 4 miles an hour, sweating while you're walking, right? Walking to where you can still talk, but not necessarily sing. Those are all good things. So keep it going. Thank you, Brother Narcisse. This is a point that I always make, and I neglected to make it to this point, so I'll point it out to you. When you are trying to become a better consumer of health, consider the source. I always tell people that's rule number one when they send me YouTube post or somebody's blog or somebody's article. Consider the source. When a cure for cancer is discovered, it's not going to be posted on a YouTube channel by some miscellaneous individual. Believe me when I tell you, there's going to be the American Medical Association or some pharmaceutical company that's trying to monetize that discovery that's going to make a clarion call very loudly, touting the benefits that they just came across. So by all means, learn how to be skeptical, learn what are reputable sources of information, and proceed with caution and accordingly. All right. Ricky Frazier asked how much walking is required a day. We talked about that. Strive for 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. That gets you to what the American Heart Association's recommendations are. In terms of this conversation and improving your life expectancy, simply doing it 3 times a week actually produces enough additive benefits to where you will increase your life expectancy. So there we go. That's good. Nobody has posted their scores in the comments, which is fine. I'll trust that you'll do this on your own. And let's go to the last slide, I believe. There we are. This is what's happening next. We greatly appreciate you participating in the Surgeon General Initiative webinars. And to give you a teaser as to what the next series of webinars are, here we go. We're going to be revisiting mental health on May 25th, talking about grieving. And we say this with all due respect and all due empathy. There is a difference between normal and abnormal grieving, and we want to tease the difference between the two. We will get back to basics on June 8th and talk about diet and nutrition. On June 22nd, we will have a dental health presentation talking about dental pain, when you should consider it just a toothache and when you should consider that perhaps it might be a heart attack or other such considerations. And then right after the 4th of July, we'll be back talking about stress, how it kills and how you can avoid it. So unless there are any other questions that we have here, we will end here. And I thank you for participating in this webinar on behalf of our board of directors and Brother General President Willis Lonson III. I am Surgeon General Jeffrey Sterling. Thanking you for your participation. Thank you and have a great evening.